The sky of Letheria burned like liquid fire, streaked with orange and purple. Princess Seraphine stood on the balcony of the royal palace, her eyes fixed on the horizon where the enemy fleet had appeared. She had never felt so powerless in her life. The city below was in chaos. Buildings crumbled, streets were empty, and the people she had promised to protect ran in every direction. Her heart ached. Seraphine was the youngest princess of Letheria, a planet renowned for its advanced technology and rich history. The Letherians had always been proud of their empire, confident that their intelligence and skill would protect them from any threat. But nothing could have prepared Seraphine for the sudden invasion. The enemy, a ruthless alien species known as the Krathar, had struck without warning. Their ships were fast, their weapons precise, and their strategy devastating. The princess had tried everything. She had commanded her fleet, ordered evacuations, and used every defense system at her disposal. Yet, in a matter of hours, her kingdom had fallen. Letheria's great cities were in ruins, and the people she loved most were scattered across the planet, or worse. She had never imagined the empire she had grown up believing was unbreakable could crumble so quickly. Now, she was alone. The royal guards who had survived the attack were either captured or fled. Her advisors were gone. The palace, once a symbol of strength and beauty, was now a hollow shell of fire and smoke. Seraphine felt the weight of the world pressing down on her young shoulders. She had lost everything. She turned away from the balcony and entered the communication chamber, a room filled with consoles and holographic displays. Her fingers trembled as she activated the emergency distress beacon. The signal was weak, fading into the vastness of space. Still, it was all she had. She typed a simple message. "Help! Princess Seraphine, Letheria under attack. I am alone." The message was sent into the void, a plea that might never be answered. Seraphine sank into the chair, feeling utterly hopeless. Tears threatened to fall, but she wiped them away. She could not allow herself to break down. Not yet. She had to survive. Hours passed. The silence of the asteroid outside the palace walls was deafening. Seraphine scanned the monitors, looking for any sign of life, ally or enemy. Nothing. Her ship, a small escape vessel she had taken when the palace was overrun, floated silently in the docking bay. She knew she could not stay on Letheria. It was too dangerous. She had to leave even if she had no destination, even if she had no hope. Finally, with a deep breath, she entered the vessel. It was small and simple compared to the massive warships of her fleet, but it was enough to escape. She took one last look at the burning horizon, at the world she had failed to save. A sharp pang of grief hit her chest. "I promised my people," she whispered. "I promised I would protect them." Her hands gripped the controls as the ship lifted off the ground. The engines roared softly, and the vessel rose above the ruined city. Outside, the Krathar ships patrolled the skies, but none noticed her tiny escape pod as it slipped silently into the darkness of space. For days, Seraphine drifted through the empty void. She had enough supplies for a short journey, but her heart was heavy with despair. She tried to keep her mind occupied, studying star maps, calculating trajectories, and running simulations for possible allies. But each calculation ended the same way. She was alone, and the galaxy seemed indifferent to her suffering. At night, she would stare out the window of her vessel, gazing at the stars. They were beautiful, but they mocked her. They reminded her of how small she was, how powerless she felt. She thought of her family, her people, and all the lives lost in the war. Anguish settled in her chest like a heavy stone. She had no plan, no army, and no one to turn to. She had lost all hope. And yet, one night, as she floated near the edge of a distant solar system, a faint signal appeared on her console. It was weak and irregular, almost like a flicker in the dark. Seraphine leaned forward, her heart beating faster. Signals in this part of space were rare. Only a few civilizations had the technology to communicate across such distances. Curiosity, a faint spark in her heart, overcame her despair. She traced the signal. It was coming from a small, distant star system, far from any known Litherian allies. She activated the communications array and sent a cautious message. "Who is there? Identify yourself." There was a pause, then a reply. "Hello? I think you need help." The voice was calm, gentle, and unfamiliar. Seraphine blinked. It was not in the Litherian dialect she expected. It was human. She had heard of humans, primitive, young, and inexperienced compared to the great empires of the galaxy, but she had never imagined that one could reach this far. "Human?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Why would a human help me?" "Because no one deserves to be alone," the voice replied simply. "I can help. I don't know everything, but I can try." Seraphine hesitated. Could she trust this stranger? Could a human student, someone she had only heard about in stories, really help her? Her mind raced with doubt. Humans were clever, yes, but they were fragile. They had no ships capable of interstellar war, no armies to challenge the Krathar. Why would this human even try? And yet, the hope, tiny and fragile, began to grow. For the first time in days, Seraphine felt something stir inside her chest, a flicker of possibility. Maybe, just maybe, she was not as alone as she thought. She replied carefully, testing the connection. "If you can help, what can you do?" "I can build," the human said. "I can think, plan, and try to solve problems. I'm not a soldier, but I'm good at fixing things. Maybe together, we can find a way out of your situation." Seraphine felt a small, cautious smile form on her lips. It was strange how comforting a human voice could be, even through a cold, digital connection across light years. She allowed herself to hope, just a little. Perhaps this student could be the key to survival, even if the galaxy had turned against her. But the moment of hope was fragile. On her sensors, Krathar ships were approaching the coordinates of her last known position. They would soon scan this sector of space. Seraphine's escape pod was fast, but not fast enough to outrun a fleet. She had no choice but to trust the human and work together if she wanted to survive. "All right," she whispered to herself. "Let's see what you can do, human." And with that, the first step of an impossible journey began. Alone, stranded, and almost out of hope, Princess Seraphine had sent her trust into the void. She did not know if the human would succeed, or if the galaxy would allow her to live another day. But for the first time since the fall of Litheria, she felt the faintest glimmer of hope. The stars stretched endlessly before her, vast and unyielding. Yet somewhere out there, a human student waited, and perhaps together, they could change the course of her fate, and the fate of her people. The silent, lonely asteroid fields of the outer system loomed ahead. The Krathar were closing in. But Seraphine no longer felt entirely powerless. She had reached across the stars and found the unlikeliest of allies. The journey had begun. Princess Seraphine sat in her small escape vessel, staring at the glowing points of light that marked the stars around her. The human's voice had stayed with her ever since the first message arrived. Calm, confident, gentle. "I can help. I don't know everything, but I can try." She had never imagined she would rely on a human, let alone one so far from their home system. Humans were considered primitive by most civilizations in the galaxy. They lacked the fleets, the weaponry, and the long history of interstellar strategy that Litherians had mastered. And yet, the thought of this human trying to help made her feel something she had not felt in days: possibility. Her console beeped again. The human had sent another message. "I have a plan, but I need more information. Tell me everything about your situation and your ship." Seraphine hesitated. Humans were clever, yes, but she did not know them personally. How much could she reveal? Could she trust this student with the location of her escape pod? And yet the alternative, staying silent and alone, was worse. With a deep breath, she typed, "I am Princess Seraphine of Lytheria. My planet has been attacked by the Krathar. My fleet is destroyed. My people are scattered. I have escaped in a small vessel. I have no weapons, no backup, and limited supplies. My position is near the outer asteroid belt of the Lytheria system." There was a pause, a silence that felt like minutes. Then the human responded, "Understood. I can work with that. Don't worry about being alone. We'll figure something out. I might be a student, but I know how to make things. I can build, fix, and even improvise when needed. You just need to hold on." Seraphine felt a strange warmth at the words. This human had no army, no advanced warship, and no political power. But the determination in the voice was real. Perhaps determination was something humans had in abundance, something even the most advanced alien species sometimes lacked. "What can you possibly do to help me?" she asked. "First, I need to stabilize your position," the human replied. "Your pod is fine for drifting, but the Krathar can detect you easily. I will create a temporary shield for your ship. It won't be perfect, but it can hide your signature long enough to plan an escape. After that, we'll see what else we can do." Seraphine frowned. "A temporary shield? How? You are not a soldier. You are a student." "Exactly," the human said simply. "Students think differently. We don't follow standard tactics. Sometimes that's an advantage. Trust me." For the first time in days, Seraphine felt hope. She nodded to herself and began following the human's instructions. The communication continued for hours. She relayed the specifications of her vessel, the energy sources she had, and the surrounding asteroid formations that might provide cover. The human guided her, explaining in clear, simple terms how to adjust her ship's sensors and energy outputs to appear invisible to the Krathar scanners. By the next day, Seraphine noticed a difference. The beeping alerts from her sensors, warnings of approaching Krathar patrols, had stopped. The ship seemed to blend with the void around it. The temporary shield was working. "You did this?" she asked in disbelief. "We did this," the human corrected. "I guided you, but you followed instructions perfectly. That's teamwork." Seraphine smiled faintly. It was strange, but comforting. A human, a student from a distant star system, had given her something no Lytherian military officer could: hope. Her first day of contact with the human passed with careful planning. By the second day, she began to understand the human's approach. Alex, the human had told her his name, did not rely on brute force. He relied on clever thinking, imagination, and making use of what was available. He suggested ways to adjust the ship's trajectory using gravity slingshots from nearby asteroids, something Lytherian ships rarely did. "You're thinking outside the box," Seraphine said, impressed despite herself. "I've never seen a Lytherian navigator suggest this." "Humans are good at looking for solutions that aren't obvious," Alex replied. "Sometimes you have to use what others consider weak or small to your advantage." Seraphine realized he was right. Even in her own empire, she had relied on structured plans, massive fleets, and overwhelming force. Humans, though smaller and less advanced, had a kind of creativity that could surprise even the most skilled strategists. The peaceful moment did not last long. A sharp alert from her sensors warned her that a Krathar reconnaissance ship was approaching. Seraphine's heart pounded. She activated the shield as Alex had instructed, but the patrol ship was close. Its scanners swept the asteroid field, and she feared it might detect her. "Stay calm," Alex said. I see the patrol. Adjust your angle by 5 degrees and use the small gravitation field from that asteroid to drift behind it. They won't see you if you move slowly. Seraphine followed the instructions with precision. Her hands shook, but she trusted the human's guidance. The Krathar ship swept past her vessel, scanning the region thoroughly, and then it left. Seraphine exhaled slowly, relief washing over her. "You saved me," she whispered. "No," Alex replied, gentle and firm. "We saved you together." Days passed in a blur of planning and careful maneuvers. Seraphine learned to trust Alex's guidance completely. He taught her ways to use her limited energy sources efficiently, how to camouflage the ship in asteroid debris, and even how to create minor decoys to mislead enemy scanners. Seraphine realized that while the human had no weapons, he had something equally powerful: intelligence, patience, and ingenuity. One evening, as they rested for a brief moment in the safe shadow of a large asteroid, Seraphine spoke. "Alex, why do you help me? You are far from your home, a student with no army. Why risk yourself for someone you have never met?" There was a pause. Then the human replied, simply, "Because no one deserves to be completely alone. Even if I fail, I have to try. I believe hope is worth fighting for." Seraphine's eyes softened. She had been alone for so long, abandoned by her own world, overwhelmed by despair. Hearing these words from a human, a species she had underestimated, filled her with a strange but welcome warmth. Perhaps hope did not require armies, wealth, or power. Perhaps it could be found in courage, intelligence, and a willingness to act. The next challenge arrived sooner than expected. While navigating through an uncharted region of the asteroid belt, Seraphine's sensors detected another Krathar ship closing in. This one was larger, heavily armed, and moving directly toward her vessel. Panic threatened to take hold, but Alex's voice calmed her. "Listen," he said. "We have a chance. Use the large asteroid to your left. I want you to move slowly around it. The ship will overshoot if you time it right. Then we use a decoy to trick them. Ready?" Seraphine nodded, her hands steady now. She executed the plan with care. The larger Krathar ship scanned the region and adjusted its course, just as Alex predicted. When it passed, Seraphine activated the decoy, a small probe she had modified under Alex's guidance. The decoy emitted energy signals mimicking her vessel. The Krathar ship changed course to pursue the decoy, leaving her alone once more. She allowed herself a small smile. For the first time since the fall of Litheria, she felt like she could survive this journey. "You are remarkable," she said softly. "I have never met anyone like you." "We're just getting started," Alex replied with a hint of humor. "If we can handle this, the rest of the galaxy might not be so scary after all." The sun rose over the distant horizon of the asteroid belt. Light spilled across the void, illuminating the tiny escape vessel as it drifted silently among the rocks. Seraphine gazed out the window, feeling the first spark of confidence since her world had fallen. She realized something important. Survival was not just about power or technology. It was about creativity, quick thinking, and courage, even in the face of impossible odds. Humans, she thought, might be small and fragile, but they were capable of brilliance and bravery that even the most advanced Litherian minds could not always predict. And so, in the cold darkness of space, a bond was formed. An alien princess, alone and lost, and a human student, far from home, working together to defy the odds. Each had something the other lacked. Seraphine had experience and knowledge of interstellar politics. Alex had ingenuity and courage. Together, they began to weave a plan that might just save them both. For now, they were still vulnerable. And the Krathar threat loomed ever closer. But for the first time in weeks, Seraphine felt the faintest flicker of hope. She was no longer alone. Somewhere out there in a distant star system, Humanity had reached across the void. And perhaps, just perhaps, the galaxy was about to witness something extraordinary. The journey was only beginning, but Seraphine knew one thing: she would not give up. Not now, not ever. And with a human student by her side, hope was no longer impossible. The void of space stretched endlessly, cold and silent, as Princess Seraphine floated in her small escape vessel. Days had passed since the human, Alex, had first reached her through the stars, and each day had brought a mix of hope and danger. She had come to rely on his guidance, his steady voice, and his clever strategies, but now a new challenge loomed. She would need more than hiding and decoys. She would need to move. Alex's messages crackled through the communication console. "Seraphine, I've calculated a route to a nearby human outpost. It's remote, but safe. I can guide your pod there. It won't be easy. You'll need to navigate asteroid fields, dodge Krathar patrols, and make use of gravitational slingshots. But I believe it can be done." Seraphine stared at the blinking lights on her console, imagining the path through the treacherous asteroid belt. Her heart beat faster. She had survived so far by drifting and hiding, but now she had to move actively, to steer through danger. It was terrifying and exhilarating. "How long will it take?" she asked. "Depends on how careful we are," Alex replied. "If we move too fast, the Krathar will detect you. Too slow and supplies may run out. Timing is everything." Seraphine took a deep breath. "Then let's begin." The journey started with careful precision. Under Alex's instructions, she adjusted the vessel's trajectory, using the gravitational pull of large asteroids to slingshot forward. Every movement had to be calculated with exact precision, or she risked collision or detection. She felt a thrill she had not experienced since before Letheria fell, the thrill of control, of action, of hope. For hours they navigated silently. The only sounds were the soft hum of the ship's engines and the steady voice of Alex guiding her. "Now, drift to the left 3 degrees. Slow down just slightly. That asteroid ahead, use it as cover. Good. Perfect." Seraphine followed his guidance carefully. It was a delicate dance. The asteroid belt was dense and dangerous, but Alex's instructions were flawless. He had never been in space like this, yet somehow he saw the path clearly. She began to realize that humans, despite their lack of technology compared to Letherians, had a kind of brilliance that came from thinking differently. "You're amazing," she said quietly. "I can't believe how well you can navigate this without even being trained for war or space missions." Alex chuckled through the console. "Humans learn by improvising. We don't have huge fleets or decades of experience, but we can adapt. Sometimes that's better than following rigid rules." Hours turned into a full day. Seraphine's hands were tired, her mind alert, but they were making progress. She could see faint lights in the distance, markers that Alex had indicated for course corrections. The human outpost was still far away, but each step brought her closer to safety. Then the danger escalated. Her sensors beeped furiously. A Krathar scout ship had appeared, fast and precise. Unlike the patrols she had evaded before, this ship seemed to sense the faint traces of her vessel's energy. Seraphine's heart leapt. She had no weapons. Her escape pod was small, fragile, and unarmed. If detected, she would have nowhere to run. "Stay calm," Alex said. "I see it. We can outmaneuver it, but you must follow my instructions exactly. Turn 90 degrees to starboard. Use the asteroid field ahead for cover. I'll guide you through a trick they won't expect." Her hands moved quickly, adjusting the ship's thrusters, angling the vessel toward the dense part of the asteroid belt. The scout ship followed, scanning carefully. The tension was unbearable. One wrong move, one miscalculation, and the Krathar would capture her. "Now," Alex said, "activate the decoy probe. It should appear slightly ahead of your position. The scout will follow it instead of you. Seraphine launched the probe. It floated ahead, emitting energy signals mimicking her ship. Almost immediately, the Krathar ship adjusted its course, tracking the decoy. Relief flooded her, but she did not relax completely. There were more dangers ahead. "You see," Alex said calmly, "humans don't always rely on strength. Sometimes a little creativity is all you need." Seraphine smiled faintly. "I see that now." The next part of the journey was even more challenging. Alex instructed her to navigate through a narrow corridor of asteroids, so tight that even a small error could crush the vessel. He gave her precise instructions on speed, angle, and timing. Seraphine followed, heart pounding, hands steady. For hours they moved like dancers through the void, the silent asteroids their stage. And then a new threat appeared. A Krathar drone, smaller but faster than the scout ship, appeared directly in their path. It was designed to detect and follow small, fast-moving objects. Seraphine's mind raced. She had no weapons to destroy it. "Don't panic," Alex said firmly. "We'll use the asteroid gravity to our advantage. Circle behind the larger rock, then adjust the thrusters to appear as if your vessel is stationary. The drone will overshoot and lose track of you." She followed his instructions perfectly. The drone zipped past, confused, scanning for her vessel. And then, just as Alex predicted, it moved on. "You are incredible," Seraphine said, her admiration growing. "How do you think so clearly under pressure?" "Humans survive by adapting," Alex replied. "We have to. Sometimes that's the difference between life and death." By the third day, Seraphine began to feel a strange bond forming with the human guiding her. His cleverness, patience, and courage amazed her. She had expected humans to be weak, limited, and slow to act. Instead, Alex was proving that even without armies or powerful technology, humans could be a force to reckon with. She thought about her people, her fallen kingdom, and the lessons she had learned. Strength was not always about weapons or fleets. Sometimes it was about thinking differently, acting boldly, and trusting the unexpected. And for the first time, she realized that the universe had not entirely abandoned her. The fourth day brought another challenge, a dense field of rogue asteroids drifting unpredictably through the void. Navigating this field required constant adjustment, quick thinking, and precise timing. Alex guided her step by step, explaining how to use the gravitational pull of smaller asteroids to slip past the larger, dangerous ones. "Think of it as a puzzle," he said. "The pieces move. But if you understand the pattern, you can move through safely." Seraphine worked steadily, following his instructions. Hours passed, but she began to notice a rhythm in the chaos of the asteroid field. She began to anticipate the movements herself, predicting which rocks would drift into her path. By the time they exited the field, she realized she had grown more confident, more skilled, and more determined than she had felt in weeks. "Alex," she said, "I think I understand now. Humans, you see things differently. You adapt. You survive in ways I never imagined." "Exactly," he replied. "And together, we can survive anything." Finally, after nearly a week of careful navigation, Seraphine spotted the faint glimmer of the human outpost in the distance. It was small, hidden in the shadow of a massive asteroid, but it was enough. Safety was within reach. "Almost there," Alex said. "But one more thing. You'll need to make a small jump through the asteroid cluster to reach the docking bay. Timing is critical. Ready?" Seraphine nodded. Her hands moved steadily over the controls. She could feel her heart pounding, but she no longer felt fear, only focus, determination, and hope. The vessel responded perfectly to her commands. The asteroids blurred past as she made the jump, and then, with a soft vibration, the ship docked safely at the hidden outpost. She exhaled slowly, relief washing over her. She was safe, for now. She floated in the small docking bay, gazing at the human student who had guided her across so much danger, even though he was far away, connected only through a simple communication link. "Alex." "We made it," she whispered. "We did it together," he replied. For the first time since the fall of Letheria, Seraphine allowed herself to feel genuine hope. She had escaped the Krathar patrols, navigated dangerous asteroid fields, and survived because of a human's ingenuity and courage. She realized that even in the vast, indifferent galaxy, help could come from the most unexpected places. As she stepped out of her vessel and onto the outpost's small platform, she looked at the stars once more. The journey was far from over. She would still need to rebuild, to fight, and to lead her people. But now, she had a human ally, someone whose courage and creativity had saved her life. And for the first time in a long time, she believed that perhaps nothing in the universe was truly impossible. The hidden human outpost was small, almost unnoticeable against the black expanse of space, tucked behind a massive asteroid that shielded it from sensors. Princess Seraphine stepped onto the platform, her legs trembling slightly from exhaustion and the stress of the journey. For the first time in over a week, she felt a sense of stability. She was safe, for now. Alex's voice came through the console, calm and encouraging. "Welcome to the outpost, Seraphine. Take a moment to rest. You've earned it." Seraphine allowed herself to look around. The outpost was simple but efficient. Docking bays, small energy shields, and a few stations for research and communication. It was nothing compared to Letheria's sprawling cities, but it was functional, safe, and hidden. She realized she had been relying too much on her people's technology and not enough on creativity and practical ingenuity. This human, with no armies or weapons, had saved her through clever thinking and determination alone. "Alex, I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice soft but sincere. "Don't thank me yet," he replied. "We still have work to do. The Krathar know you're alive, and they'll send more ships if we don't act carefully. But we have an advantage now. A hidden base. And the element of surprise." Seraphine's eyes narrowed. "What do you propose?" "First, we assess what resources we have," Alex explained. "We can repair and modify your escape pod. Then we gather intelligence on the enemy fleet. Finally, we plan a counteroffensive. Not through brute force, they are too strong, but through strategy, deception, and speed." Seraphine considered this. Her first instinct as a Letherian princess was to gather fleets, train soldiers, and attack head-on. But she had learned from Alex that traditional methods were not always the best. Humans solved problems differently. They adapted. They used creativity, not just strength. "All right," she said. "We'll follow your plan." For the next several hours, Seraphine and Alex worked together, even though he was communicating from his distant home lab through the console. They analyzed the Krathar fleet's patterns, studied asteroid paths for cover, and designed modifications to her escape pod that would allow short bursts of speed and stealth maneuvers. Alex instructed her on minor but effective energy adjustments that could mislead enemy sensors. "This is incredible," Seraphine said as she adjusted the pod's controls. "You're turning a small, unarmed vessel into a ship capable of evading one of the deadliest fleets in the galaxy." "It's not the size of the ship," Alex replied with a small smile. "It's the way you use it." As they worked, Seraphine reflected on her own limitations. She had grown up in luxury and privilege, relying on technology and armies to solve problems. But now, guided by Alex's ingenuity, she realized that intelligence and courage mattered just as much, sometimes more. Humans, she thought, were underestimated for a reason. They were smaller, less advanced, but remarkably clever and resourceful. By the following day, the pod was ready. The modifications were minimal but effective. Small energy bursts for quick maneuvers, stealth adjustments to confuse enemy sensors, and minor decoy systems that could imitate the vessel's signature. Seraphine ran final tests, her confidence growing with each successful trial. "Alex, I'm ready," she said. "Good. Now we need to draw the enemy in," he replied. "We'll use a small probe to create a signal that looks like your pod. The Krathar will think you're still drifting in the asteroid belt, while we sneak behind them to gather intelligence." "Timing is critical." Seraphine took a deep breath. The plan was risky. If the Krathar detected her too early, she would have no chance of escape. But Alex's confidence inspired her. They had come this far, and the human had never led her astray. With careful precision, she launched the decoy probe. It drifted ahead, emitting faint energy signals that mimicked her vessel. Almost immediately, a Krathar scout adjusted its course, moving to intercept the probe. Seraphine watched from her hiding spot, heart pounding. "Perfect," Alex said. "Now move quickly but quietly around the edge of the asteroid field. You'll have a clear path to observe the enemy fleet without being detected." Her hands moved expertly, guiding the pod along the precise route Alex had calculated. The asteroid field stretched out before her, dangerous and unpredictable. But she felt a thrill she had not experienced in weeks: control, action, hope. Through the gaps between massive rocks, she saw the Krathar fleet ahead. Ships of various sizes moved with deadly precision, scanning the void. Seraphine's eyes widened at the scale of the enemy. It would have been impossible to face them head-on, but Alex's plan relied not on strength, but on intelligence. She would observe, gather information, and live to fight another day. For hours, she navigated the asteroid field, careful not to trigger sensors or alarms. Alex guided her with calm, clear instructions, explaining how to interpret the Krathar signals and avoid detection. Seraphine marveled at his ability to think several steps ahead, predicting enemy movements and calculating safe paths. "Alex, how do you know so much about their fleet?" she asked. "I don't know everything," he admitted, "but humans are good at spotting patterns. We notice things that others overlook, and sometimes you just have to guess and adapt quickly." Seraphine smiled faintly. Humans were underestimated, she realized. They were small, fragile, and young in the galaxy's history. But they had something powerful: intelligence and courage combined with creativity. She had relied too much on Letherian technology and tradition, and now she saw a better way forward. As she completed her observation of the Krathar fleet, Alex outlined the next step: a daring counteroffensive. Using the information she had gathered, they would create a diversion while striking a small but critical target in the enemy's supply line. It was risky, but it could change the course of the war. Seraphine hesitated for a moment. This could work?" she asked, her voice tense. "It could," Alex replied, "but it will require precision, timing, and courage. I believe you can do it." Confidence surged within her. She was no longer a helpless princess drifting through space. She had survived danger, learned to navigate treacherous fields, and now had a human ally who trusted her abilities. It was her turn to act, to take the lessons she had learned and use them to turn the tide. The following day, she put the plan into motion. Following Alex's instructions, she navigated closer to the enemy supply lines, using the asteroid shadows to remain undetected. She deployed decoys and energy flares to distract the Krathar, while carefully recording fleet movements and weak points. Hours passed, and the tension grew. Each movement was critical. One misstep could lead to capture or destruction, yet Seraphine remained calm, focusing on the task at hand. She thought of her people, her fallen kingdom, and the human who had guided her. Courage was not the absence of fear, she realized, but the ability to act despite it. Finally, she reached the critical point: a small supply station lightly guarded but vital to the Krathar fleet. Alex instructed her on how to deploy a minor disruption, small but effective, that would interfere with enemy communications and supplies. Seraphine executed the plan flawlessly, watching as the station's systems faltered and signals scrambled. "Well done," Alex said. "That should slow them down significantly. Now, retreat carefully. The distraction will give you cover." Seraphine guided the pod back through the asteroid field, using every trick Alex had taught her. By the time she returned to the hidden outpost, she felt a mixture of relief and exhilaration. The first step in turning the tide had succeeded. Stepping onto the platform, she allowed herself a small smile. She had survived, adapted, and even struck back against an enemy far more powerful than herself. And it was all because a human, a student, had believed in her when she had lost all hope. "Alex," she said softly, I don't know how to thank you. You've given me more than safety. You've given me hope." "Hope is something worth sharing," he replied. "And this is just the beginning. Together we can do even more." Seraphine nodded. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and unpredictable, but she had learned a valuable lesson. Strength was not only in armies or weapons, it was in intelligence, courage, and the willingness to act when others would give up. For the first time since Letheria fell, she felt empowered. The enemy was strong, the journey ahead difficult, but with a human ally at her side, she believed they could face anything. And in that moment, amidst the cold stars and silent asteroid shadows, Princess Seraphine made a promise. To herself, to her people, and to Alex. She would not give up. She would fight. She would survive. And one day, the galaxy would know that even in the darkest moments, hope could shine, guided by courage, intelligence, and the unlikeliest of allies. The tide had begun to turn. The human outpost had grown quiet after the chaos of the counteroffensive. Princess Seraphine stood on the observation deck, gazing out at the stars, her mind racing. For the first time since the fall of Letheria, she felt a flicker of hope, something she had thought impossible in the days of despair. She had survived, evaded the Krathar fleet, and even disrupted their supply lines. But she knew the final challenge was yet to come, the liberation of her people and the restoration of her empire. Alex's voice came through the console, steady and reassuring. "Seraphine, the Krathar fleet is regrouping near the outer sector. They'll expect you to hide, but we can use that against them. We have a plan to strike at the heart of their operations and create an opportunity for your people to regroup." Seraphine turned toward the console, her determination solidifying. "Tell me what to do, Alex. I trust your plan." "First, we gather the survivors," Alex explained. "Your people are scattered across small asteroids and ruined colonies. If we can unite them quietly, they can form a network to support the counterattack. I'll guide you in setting up communication relays and creating safe routes. You must move quickly." With Alex's guidance, Seraphine set out in her modified escape pod. Each movement was carefully calculated, slipping past patrols, using decoys, and navigating asteroid fields. The survivors were wary and frightened, but when they saw the princess alive and heard her determination, their spirits lifted. She spoke to them with courage and compassion, sharing the plan Alex had devised. "Together," she told them, "we can survive, we can rebuild, we can show the galaxy that Letherians are not defeated, and you are not alone." Over the next several days, Seraphine and the survivors followed Alex's instructions. Small communication relays were established, safe routes mapped, and strategic positions chosen for defense. The Krathar remained unaware, believing their victory over Letheria was complete. But the humans' ingenuity turned the tide. Using clever decoys, hidden signals, and improvised maneuvers, Alex created the illusion of Letheria being empty, while Seraphine secretly gathered her people. The princess marveled at his brilliance. Humans, she realized, were underestimated for a reason. They lacked the vast fleets and centuries of knowledge the Litherians had, but they could think differently, improvise, and solve impossible problems. And when combined with her leadership and the loyalty of her people, it became a powerful force. Finally, the moment arrived. The Krathar fleet was vulnerable. Its attention focused on false signals and decoys, leaving its supply station lightly guarded. Seraphine's small fleet of survivors, guided by Alex, moved into position. The plan was daring. A swift, precise strike to disable the enemy supply lines, giving Litherians a chance to regroup and counterattack. "Remember," Alex said through the console, "speed and precision are everything. You don't need to destroy their entire fleet. Just create an opening. Timing is critical." Seraphine nodded, her heart pounding but her resolve firm. She led her people through the asteroid fields, moving silently but with purpose. The Krathar ships were caught off guard, distracted by the decoys Alex had designed. Seraphine's fleet struck with calculated precision, disabling the enemy supply station and creating chaos among their ranks. "Now!" Alex's voice urged. "Retreat through the asteroid corridor. Use the shadows to hide your movements. They'll be confused and we can guide them to safe zones." Seraphine followed his instructions perfectly. The Krathar fleet, disoriented and slowed by the disruption, could not mount an effective pursuit. Her people moved swiftly through hidden routes, guided by the princess and the human who had saved her. As they regrouped at the hidden outpost, Seraphine allowed herself a moment to breathe. Her people were alive. They were safe, for now. And the Krathar had been dealt a blow that would slow their advances. It was the first real victory since the fall of Litheria. "You did this," she said, looking at the console as Alex's voice came through. "You saved us all." "No," Alex corrected gently. "We did this. You led your people. You made the decisions. I only helped guide the way." Seraphine smiled faintly. She had learned a powerful lesson. True strength was not only in armies, weapons, or technology. It was in courage, intelligence, creativity, and the willingness to act when others would give up. Alex had shown her that humans, despite their seeming fragility, possessed these qualities in abundance. With the immediate threat subdued, Seraphine turned her thoughts to the future. The Krathar would not give up easily and Litheria would need rebuilding, but she felt something she had not felt in weeks: confidence. With her people united and Alex's guidance, she could face whatever challenges lay ahead. "Alex," she said softly, "I want you to come to Litheria. Your guidance, your ingenuity. The people need to see that humans can be allies, friends, and even heroes." "I'll come when it's safe," Alex replied. "For now, you have the advantage here. Lead your people and we'll continue to coordinate. We'll make sure the Krathar know that underestimating humans and Litherians was a mistake." Seraphine nodded. Even without Alex physically present, his influence was evident. The human had proven that courage and creativity could overcome even the most overwhelming odds. And for the first time, she felt not just hope, but determination and purpose. Over the following weeks, Seraphine worked tirelessly to rebuild. The survivors she had gathered became leaders in their own right, taking on responsibilities and supporting each other. Communication relays expanded, allowing scattered groups to coordinate. Small victories accumulated, each one boosting morale. And through it all, Alex remained a guiding voice, a distant but steadfast ally. One evening, as Seraphine watched the twin suns set over the horizon of Litheria, she reflected on how far she had come. From despair and hopelessness, she had grown into a leader capable of guiding her people through unimaginable danger. She had learned to trust, to adapt, and to value intelligence and ingenuity as much as strength and tradition. And she had discovered something else. Humans, underestimated by the galaxy, were capable of brilliance, courage, and heroism. Alex had shown her that even the smallest, seemingly fragile beings could change the course of events when determination and intelligence were applied with skill. The stars stretched endlessly above, silent witnesses to the resilience of life, hope, and courage. Seraphine felt a sense of pride, not in her own survival alone, but in the strength of her people and the unlikely bond with the human student who had saved her. Finally, she spoke aloud, her voice carrying across the quiet outpost. "The galaxy may think we are defeated, but we are not. With courage, intelligence, and unity, we will rebuild, we will thrive, and we will show the universe that hope cannot be destroyed." And somewhere, across the vast distances of space, Alex smiled as he heard her words. He had reached out across the stars, guided by hope, ingenuity, and determination, and together they had changed the course of destiny. Litheria would rise again. Its people would remember that even in the darkest moments there is a spark that cannot be extinguished, the spark of hope, courage, and the brilliance of humanity. Princess Seraphine, once lost and hopeless, now stood at the forefront of her people's revival, her confidence renewed, her purpose clear. And though the Krathar threat remained, she knew this: as long as humans and Litharians worked together, as long as courage and intelligence guided them, no challenge was insurmountable. The galaxy had underestimated humans, and it had learned its first lesson. The journey was far from over, but hope, once extinguished, had been rekindled. And with it, the promise of a brighter future, stronger alliances, and the undeniable power of unity and ingenuity shone brighter than the stars themselves.